Here I am with Jean-Luc in his tack room. We're going to have another kind of tack room discussion. We're going to be talking about navicular disease, but we're really doing more than that, in that we're setting up a methodology for how to look at these diseases. I'm a veterinary pathologist, and I have an interest in bone and joint disease, and we kept focusing on the lesions, which is what they do clinically. We focus on the tissue damage. And then you go, oh, for a pathologist, you go, look at the pretty lesions. And then you go, what did it? Mechanics. Next. And when I started writing with Jean-Luc, and he started talking about his observations, and in particular navicular disease, where he noted that the front leg was basically staying on the ground too long, and was getting, you had the front leg back off, sometimes behind the rider's leg. And that sort of stopped me, because I said, oh, maybe we ought to look at the mechanics of the tissue damage. And an analogy I would make is that the approaches that have been used, where all the focus is on the tissue damage, is almost like looking at the tissue damage that an infection does without understanding that it was caused by the infection. So we're looking at these mechanically induced lesions, and we don't look at the mechanics. Now, as we started with Michelle Osborn, I saw her at a meeting, and she was doing force analysis of the human forward head posture, which explained what was going on and why people with that would have pain shooting down their back, for example. And I was going, that's what we need when we're looking at these horse lamenesses. We need to be thinking about the forces, and you can get an idea of that by the kinematics, but you really have to be thinking in terms of forces. So when we're talking about any lameness, and again, the one we've studied the most is navicular, so this session on navicular will go into it in great detail, but the other thing it does is set up a way of thinking about these lamenesses and how to analyze the forces that are creating the tissue damage. So, and the big thing when you're thinking about the forces impacting the navicular apparatus is they're coming from the whole body. There's some coming up from the ground, but when you start thinking in terms of forces, and that's what we need to do. Where are the forces coming from? Why are they getting focused in certain areas, which is where you end up with tissue damage? And to do that, you have to do more than just look at the, mechanics of navicular for a long time was from the fetlock down. That won't solve the problem. You've got to look deeper and think in terms of forces, which is what Jean-Luc has been doing.
Yeah. Every case that navicular have been fixed, I've been focusing on the balance, recreated proper balance. The balance is the intensity of the force loading the forelegs. The frequency, when the horse is rushed forward, is off balance, and the intensity of the force increase and the frequency. And then the direction, when the horse is crooked or travel in inverted rotation, the direction of the force go the wrong way. And after all the system who absorb the force, the fetlock who translate down, the navicular, the digital cushion, the frog, the hoof, all those force, all those structures receive a force that they cannot handle. So every case, we have fixed 27 cases of navicular syndrome, and they come back to complete soundness, not just soundness, but active life. When the way always to do it always have been focusing on correcting the force loading the legs down to the navicular apparatus. So that's what we are going to explain. Of course, you need a hoof properly balanced, of course. But if we don't fix the force loading the navicular apparatus, we don't go anywhere.
And it's also, the other thing to realize about tissue is that it is, really, really good at handling forces, better than most of the artificial man-made tissues. So the idea that you're going to replace the tissue or try to fix it without doing something about the fact that it's being overloaded by the forces. If the cartilage is being overloaded by the forces impacting it, there's nothing you're going to do to that cartilage that's really going to solve the problem. What you have to do is unload it. So the big take home, and again, it's sometimes hard to understand forces because you can't see them. You can feel them. That's something that's why writing is so important, but you can't see them. You can get a hint of what's going on by how the body's positioned. So you see joints that are overloaded or legs that are working at the wrong angle. And these are all things we're going to stress as we go through navicular. Navicular disease was the first one that we really analyzed in detail, looking at forces, and we've since been applying it to other lamenesses. So this course is, yes, it's on navicular, but another very important part of it is understanding how to look and thanks with John Luke, figure out how to find where the cause of the overloading and how to correct it. Because if you do that, the tissues have a tremendous ability to respond and repair, but they have no chance as long as the overloading continues. So I hope you'll come and enjoy the course.